Thank you very much, Madame Rajavi, all of the distinguished guests and dignitaries from all over the world, and my sisters who are here to join with me in celebrating this International Day of Women. You know, a country cannot be judged in terms of whether it is great and whether it honors its people just by looking at how it treats those who are in power, those who are powerful, and those who control others. It must be judged by looking at how it treats women and minorities. If you want to judge the character of a country, you must know how it treats those who are least privileged. And when we look at the country of Iran over the last 35 years, we see a history of the oppression of the majority of the population, and most especially of the women of that country. Now, recently, we have seen a flurry of activity in the press. We've seen reaction from leaders in the West and around the world celebrating what they consider to be a new moderation in Iran with the election of Hassan Rouhani. We have seen that kind of infatuation in the press. We've certainly seen it in the administration from my own country, as if there has been some fundamental change in that country of Iran. But in fact, one of the things that we must look to judge Mr. Rouhani is how he treats the women of Iran. And what we know is that the women of Iran are as oppressed today as they have been for the last 35 years. There is no change. Has Mr. Rouhani taken on the mullahs who keep the women of Iran under their thumbs? Has he stood up for the women's right to be represented equally, to have the most basic freedoms? No, he has not. And in fact, women today are every bit as oppressed as they have been at any time in the last 35 years. And we are here today to say to the world, unless the women of Iran are free and are guaranteed their equal rights, Iran is not free, and it is a disgrace to the world. In Iran today, a woman does not have the most basic freedom. Women have no equality before the law. If a matter comes before the courts and a woman is to testify, her testimony is given 1/2 the weight of a man's. Even in the darkest days of my country's history of slavery, a slave was considered 2/3 of a person. In Iran, a woman is considered 1/2 of a person. This is not right. Women may not become judges. Women may not run for president. Women cannot even decide the most basic things about their family. A woman is not free to divorce a man. A man is free to abandon a woman. And when he abandons that woman, the children of that marriage go to the man if they are more than 2 years old. A woman has no say. This is what it means to be a woman in Iran. Women do not have the same rights of inheritance, and they are not even given the dignity of being able to decide for themselves their own right of attire. In fact, there are vice police, so-called vice police, out in the streets of Tehran and every other city in Iran, enforcing the rule of the mullahs that women should dress and behave a certain way. Now, all of this happens under a regime that denies the most basic and fundamental rights of self-representation. In 2009, the people of Iran stood up to the mullahs. They took to the streets to contest a phony election in that country. Unfortunately, even those of us in the West did not stand up for them. Unfortunately, the United States has been complicit in pretending that the mullahs are going to give up their nuclear ambitions. And what today is a threat to the people in Iran and a threat to the people in the region will tomorrow, if the regime in fact does produce bombs, and it will, if it is allowed to pursue its current source, will become a threat not just to those who live nearby. It will become a threat to the entire world. There are alternatives to this. There are freedom-loving people in Iran. There are freedom-loving Iranians throughout the world. And Madame Rajavi represents, as president-elect, the National Council of Iranian Resistance. That movement indeed does represent hope and freedom. It does represent the aspirations of the Iranian people to be able to govern themselves, to be able to decide the most fundamental things, such as freedom of conscience. One cannot force from the outside a belief in the fundamental values of human life and human belief. Religion lies within us, and our ability to be able to decide for ourselves how to worship is a fundamental right that must be recognized. The right to be able to choose through the ballot the leaders that will represent us and govern us is a fundamental right. The right to have equal justice before the laws, so that all people, not just men, not just the powerful, not just the wealthy, but all persons are accorded equal treatment under the law, is a fundamental right. The right to have freedom of access to information, to have freedom of the press, to be able to get our information from sources such as the internet and have total and open access to knowledge and information is a fundamental right. The right to education, to be able to pursue our dreams, this is a fundamental right. All of these things are represented in the document, The Platform for the Future of Iran, that the National Council of Iranian Resistance represents. So I say to you women who are gathered here today, we must be the voice of conscience. We must speak out. We must speak for our fellow sisters in Iran who cannot, under the current regime, speak for themselves. We must also speak for those voices that are in captivity, that are imprisoned in so-called Camp Liberty in Iraq. The women of Ashraf who have given their lives, the men and women of Camp Liberty who have given their lives and who today still face a threat from the Maliki regime in Iraq. We must stand with them. We must represent their voices because they cannot speak for themselves as long as they are in captivity. And so I want to thank you all for coming here today, and I am proud to be with you in solidarity with Madame Rajavi, with all of the women of Ashraf who have died, and the men, and with those who are still in captivity in Camp Liberty. And I say to you who are in this audience that you must go home to wherever it is you have come from, and you must speak with one voice that says, until we have fundamental regime change in Tehran, there will not be freedom for the women of Iran, there will not be freedom for any who live in Iran, and there will not be peace in the world. Thank you very much.